The boardroom smelled of polished wood, and coffee gone cold, the kind of smell that clung to money, power, and secrets. I sat 2 seats away from my boss. Mr. Harlan, he was a tall man, always buttoned into expensive suits, his smile as sharp as the creases in his jacket. Everyone at Harlan and Tate Consulting feared him, client staff, even his own partners. He didn't tolerate mistakes. He didn't tolerate weakness, and he certainly didn't tolerate employees speaking. When not spoken to, I had learned that lesson early on. But that morning, my hands trembled against my notepad as I stared at the numbers flashing across the projector screen. They didn't add up. The clients, 3 executives from a major healthcare chain, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had questions, my boss had none. The silence stretched until it felt like a rope tightening around my throat. And then I stood up, the air cracked, my boss's jaw locked. His lips pressed into a thin, deadly line. I had just broken his golden rule. Actually, I said, forcing my voice steady. I can explain that since I built the model. I know exactly how the numbers work. Every eye turned to me. The clients leaned forward, and my boss's gaze could have cut glass. I walked them through the model. Line by line, I explained the variables, the forecasts, the risks. As I spoke, the tension in the room shifted. The clients nodded. Relief softened their brows. One even smiled. For the first time since joining the firm, I felt like I was in control, like I mattered when I finished. The clients applauded softly, just a polite tap of hands. But it was more applause than Mr. Harlan had ever received in these meetings, and in that moment I thought I had saved the company. But the smile on my boss's face was not relief. It was something colder, sharper. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises. The clients left satisfied. The partners looked impressed. But as soon as the door closed, Mr. Harlan turned on me. "You my office now." I followed him down the hall, my stomach twisting. His office was a glass box overlooking downtown Chicago. From the 38th floor, the city looked small, powerless, breakable. He shut the door behind us. "Who gave you permission to speak?" His voice was calm, too calm. "No one," I admitted, "but they needed answers, not from you." He snapped. "You embarrassed me in front of clients. You undermined my authority." I blinked. "I saved the deal." "You saved nothing," he hissed, stepping closer. "You just signed your own death warrant in this company." That night I stayed late. The office emptied around me, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of my boss's words. I opened the financial model again. Numbers, charts, projections, they stared back at me. And then I noticed something I hadn't before. Hidden formulas, adjustments that made no sense. Someone had been tampering with the data. At first I thought it was an error, but the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't sloppy work. It was deliberate. My boss had been cooking the numbers. I leaned back, heart racing. If the clients ever saw the raw truth, they'd walk, the company would crumble, and the man who had built his empire on lies would fall with it. But I couldn't go to HR. Everyone knew they were in his pocket. I couldn't tell the partners either. Half of them owed their careers to him. I was trapped until I realized one thing. I had spoken once and I could speak again. The next morning, whispers followed me down the hallway. Colleagues who used to smile now avoided my eyes. Friends I had lunch with sat at different tables. It didn't take long to figure out why. Mr. Harlan had started a campaign against me. "She's reckless, she doesn't respect authority, she's not a team player." The words spread like wildfire by noon. I was an outcast in the office I had once called home, but something else happened that day. One of my colleagues, an analyst named Jordan, slipped a folded note onto my desk. Inside, written in hurried scroll, were just 5 words. "You're not crazy, he's lying." My breath caught. I wasn't alone for the first time. I realized there were others who saw through him, others who might stand with me that night. As the city lights flickered outside my window, I made a choice. I wasn't going to let my boss destroy me. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore, but I didn't know then that speaking the truth had only opened the first door. Behind it waited betrayal, revenge, and a darkness I never imagined. And I was about to walk straight into it. The morning after the meeting, the office felt colder, not in temperature, but in the way people looked at me. Whispers clung to the walls. Laughter stopped when I entered the break room. Smiles disappeared the moment my eyes met theirs. Mr. Harlan had wasted no time. By noon, I knew the rumor. "She thinks she's smarter than him. She embarrassed the boss in front of clients. She's reckless, dangerous." Each sentence spread like smoke, curling through every corner of the firm. By the end of the day, I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was the cautionary tale, but that note, Jordan's note, burned in my pocket like a secret flame. "You're not crazy, he's lying." Jordan was an analyst like me, younger, quieter, the kind of guy who blended into the background. I never thought he noticed much, but apparently he noticed everything. That evening, as the last of our coworkers filed out, I caught his eye. He nodded once, then disappeared into the copy room. Something told me to follow. The copy room was dim, humming with the sound of machines. Jordan leaned against the wall, arms folded. "I wasn't kidding," he said quietly. "The numbers don't add up because he changes them." I froze. "You've seen it too." He nodded. "I've been tracking it for months. Adjustments, hidden formulas. He's been covering losses with fake projections. If the clients find out, the firm collapses." I finished. Jordan's eyes darted to the door. "He'll blame you. He's already started. I've seen this before. He picks a scapegoat and burns them alive to save himself." My chest tightened. "So why are you telling me?" "Because you spoke up," Jordan said, "and now you're the only one who might have the guts to take him down." That night, I couldn't sleep. Chicago's skyline blinked outside my apartment window, but all I saw were numbers, rows and columns, lies hidden inside formulas. I opened my laptop and started digging. Every model I checked told the same story. Inflated revenue forecasts, downplayed expenses, a company dressed up like it was thriving, when in reality it was bleeding. If the truth ever came out, clients would leave, investors would sue, through. Careers would burn, including mine. The next day, I found something worse, an email chain between Mr. Harlan and one of the partners. Buried in jargon was the plan. They weren't just lying to clients. They were using the fake numbers to funnel money into a separate account embezzlement. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering. If anyone found me reading this, I'd be finished, but I saved the emails anyway, just in case that week was a blur. Mr. Harlan played his role perfectly. Charming with clients, ruthless with us. He called me into his office twice the first time to remind me I was lucky to still have a job, the second time to assign me meaningless tasks. Busy work, stay out of my way, he said, smiling that razor smile. But every night I dug deeper and Jordan helped. We met in coffee shops and parking garages. In the shadows of the city, he handed me flash drives. I handed him notes piece by piece. The puzzle grew. It wasn't just Harlan. 2 partners, 3 senior managers, even a couple of analysts. Everyone had their hands in it, and all of them were loyal to him or terrified of him. Or both. One Friday afternoon, as I packed up my desk, a colleague I once called a friend, Marissa, walked by. She leaned down and whispered, "He knows you're digging, stop before it's too late." Her perfume lingered as she walked away. I couldn't tell if it was a warning or a threat. The following Monday it happened. I logged into my computer and found my access. Restricted files I'd worked on for years gone. My email inbox scrubbed, my calendar empty. IT glitch, they told me. But the smirk on the technician's face said otherwise. They were erasing me that evening. Jordan called in a panic. They're on to me too. Someone's been asking questions about who I spend time with, where I've been stay calm. I told him we'll be careful. We just need more proof. But even as I said it, I knew the walls were closing in. The next client presentation was scheduled for Wednesday. I wasn't supposed to attend. My name wasn't even on the invite, but I knew what was coming. Another set of lies, another round of cooked numbers, and maybe an opportunity on Tuesday night. Jordan and I met in a diner off Michigan Avenue. Greasy tables, flickering neon sign, the smell of burnt coffee. It was the kind of place no one would follow us to. He slid a flash drive across the table. This is everything, the real numbers. The fake numbers, the emails. If you put this in front of the clients, Harlan can't spin it. I stared at it. So small, so simple. Yet it felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. If we do this, I whispered, there's no going back. Jordan's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time to stop going back. The next morning, I dressed carefully, gray suit, white blouse, hair tied back, professional, unshakable. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket and walked into the office like it was just another day. But the moment I entered the boardroom, my blood ran cold. Mr. Harlan was already there. So were the partners, and so was Marissa. My friend, all of them smiling, all of them waiting. And the chair at the head of the table, the one reserved for me in client presentations, it was gone. Mr. Harlan's voice cut through the silence. Ah, there she is. Just in time, every eye turned to me. Every smile was a knife, and in that instant, I knew they weren't just planning to erase me. They were planning to destroy me. The air in the boardroom was heavy, like a storm about to break. The mahogany table gleamed under the lights, polished so perfectly. I could see my own reflection staring back at me. Tight-lipped, tense, determined, Mr. Harlan stood at the head, his hands folded neatly in front of him. He didn't sit, he didn't need to. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. "Please," he said smoothly, gesturing to the empty chair at the far end. "Take a seat, but not the seat I used to occupy. Not the seat reserved for analysts, presenters, or voices that mattered. No, this was the farthest corner of the table, where assistants sat, where silence lived. I walked to the chair anyway. Every step echoed like a gavel. The partner's eyes followed me. Cold and sharp, Marissa's smile lingered, just long enough for me to feel it. Sweet on the outside, poisonous underneath, I sat. The flash drive in my pocket felt like a loaded gun. Too dangerous to show, too dangerous to hide. The clients entered a moment later. 3 executives in tailored suits, polite smiles masking exhaustion. They had flown in from Denver just for this meeting, and they wanted answers the last time I had spoken up. This time I wasn't supposed to speak at all. Mr. Harlan began the presentation. Click, slide, smile. His voice was smooth, confident. Calculated numbers appeared on the screen, flawless. Promising, perfect, but they weren't real. I knew it, Jordan knew it. And if I stayed silent, the clients would never know it. At first, the executives nodded, but then came the questions. Revenue growth, expense cuts, future projections. Each answer Mr. Harlan gave was a lie, wrapped in corporate jargon, and with every lie, my pulse quickened. I wanted to stand, I wanted to shout, I wanted to rip the curtain down and expose him. But then I noticed something. The projector screen flickered just for a moment. A formula box popped up before it disappeared. I recognized it instantly. The formulas weren't locked. Someone had been tampering with them live, which meant they wanted me to notice. Or worse, they wanted the clients to notice. Mr. Harlan glanced at me. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a setup. One of the clients frowned at the screen. These projections, they seem inflated. Can we double check the underlying data? Silence. Then every head in the room turned to me. There it was, the trap snapping shut. Mr. Harlan's voice dripped with mock concern. Well, of course we want transparency. And since my analyst here built the models, perhaps she'd be the best one to explain. Dozens of eyes pinned me down. I could almost hear the smirk beneath his words. Dance for us, fall for us. I swallowed hard. This was supposed to be my moment, the chance to prove him wrong. But if I exposed the lies now, the blame would fall squarely on me. They had set the stage perfectly. If the clients lost faith, Harlan would say it was my work, my error, my failure, and everyone else would back him up. The flash drive in my pocket felt heavier than ever. But if I revealed it too soon, they'd bury me before the clients ever saw the truth. I leaned forward, forcing my voice steady. The numbers are correct. Based on the assumption assumptions provided a safe answer. Neither confirmation nor denial. The clients exchanged glances. They weren't convinced. Mr. Harlan smiled thinly. And then, as if on cue, Marissa slid a folder across the table. Actually, she said sweetly, we found some inconsistencies in her models. My blood ran cold. The folder opened to reveal spreadsheets. My spreadsheets, dozens of pages filled with errors. Highlighted in yellow inflated revenue, misplaced formulas, sloppy mistakes. Except they weren't mine, not the way I had built them. Someone had altered the files. Replaced formulas, moved cells, twisted the data, until it looked like I was the one cooking the numbers. The client's eyes darkened. Mr. Harlan sighed heavily like a disappointed father. This is troubling. I assure you, this is not how we operate, but clearly there's been a breach in standards. He looked directly at me. Would you care to explain? Miss Daniels, every muscle in my body tensed. If I denied it outright, I'd look defensive. If I admitted fault, my career was over. Either way, they had me cornered. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room tilted. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. And then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Jordan. 2 words glowing on the screen. They planted it. I forced myself to inhale slowly. Think, stay calm. I looked up at the clients, then back at Mr. Harlan. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I would be happy to explain everything, but only if we can review the models live right now in front of everyone. The room stiffened. The partners shifted uncomfortably. Marissa's smile flickered. Mr. Harlan's jaw twitched for a beat. No one spoke. Then one of the executives said, I think that's a reasonable request. The trap had shifted slightly. Not enough to save me yet, but enough to buy time. Mr. Harlan's smile was strained now. Like glass about to crack? Of course, he said smoothly. Let's have transparency. But his eyes burned with fury, because he knew if I exposed the truth in front of the clients, the whole house of cards could collapse. The projector switched back on. The spreadsheets glowed across the screen. Dozens of numbers formulas rose. Everyone leaned forward. The air was electric, and for the first time, the power in the room shifted just slightly toward me. But as my fingers touched the keyboard, a terrifying thought struck me. What if the files on the server had already been altered? What if the evidence I had didn't match? What was in front of us now if I failed to prove myself here? It would all be over. I glanced at Mr. Harlan. His lips curled into the faintest smile, the kind that said, go ahead, try. You'll lose the flash drive in my pocket. Felt like it was burning a hole through my suit, and in that moment, I realized the only way out was to play their game, while secretly preparing to break it. The cursor blinked on the screen like a heartbeat. Every pair of eyes in the boardroom followed mine. Every movement, the clients leaned in curious. The partners stiffened nervous. And Mr. Harlan, he was smiling calm, confident like a man who knew the ending of a story. No one else had read Go Ahead, he said, voice smooth as silk. Show them. I clicked into the spreadsheet. Rows of numbers stretched endlessly. Formulas tucked neatly behind cells. I knew this model, I had built it myself, but what I saw wasn't mine. Formulas broken, references misaligned, totals bloated. It was like looking at my own handwriting, but twisted, forged, corrupted. Strange, I said, slowly scrolling through. These aren't the numbers I left here last week. One of the partners shifted in his chair. A cough covered the sound of a nervous throat clearing. The clients exchanged sharp looks. Are you suggesting your files have been altered? My pulse raced. Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Mr. Harlan chuckled low and controlled. My dear, he said, turning to the clients, this is what happens when employees feel pressured. They make mistakes, then when caught, they scramble for excuses. I assure you our integrity is intact, lies polished like diamonds. And for a moment, the client seemed to believe him. My hand brushed against my pocket. The flash drive was still there, still heavy proof the truth. But pulling it out now would be suicide. Not without timing, not without precision. I forced myself to breathe, think, strategize. I'd like to run a live check. I said, opening the formula bar right here. Right now, if anyone has tampered with this, we'll see it immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. The partners' eyes flickered to one another. Marissa's nails tapped nervously against the table. Mr. Harlan's jaw tightened, but his voice never wavered. By all means, I clicked in cell by cell. The truth began to reveal itself. Hidden formulas, circular references, linked files that didn't belong, breadcrumbs of manipulation, scattered like clues at a crime scene. The clients leaned closer. This doesn't look right. It's not, I said firmly, because someone altered it. Mr. Harlan's voice cut sharp enough. The room froze, even the client stilled. He straightened his jacket, his eyes like steel. This charade ends now. You've embarrassed this firm once. Miss Daniels, I won't let you do it again. He turned to the client's voice smooth again. I'll have our IT department provide you with a clean copy. For now, let's move on. No one of the executives interrupted. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with suspicion. I want to hear what she has to say. The power shifted just a fraction, but it was enough. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. This, I said, holding it up, is the original model, untouched with timestamps, backups, and a full trail of edits. You'll see exactly where the numbers changed. And who changed them? Gasps rippled through the room. Jordan's message echoed in my head. They planted it. I wasn't just defending myself. I was holding the blade that could cut them all down. Mr. Harlan's smile vanished. The mask slipped just for a second, then it was back, polished, controlled. That's confidential company property. He snapped. If you've stolen data, you'll face serious consequences. I met his gaze, unflinching. If exposing the truth is theft, then maybe this company deserves the consequences. The clients shifted uncomfortably. The partners whispered among themselves. And for the first time, Mr. Harlan looked cornered. But he wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The door to the boardroom opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped inside. Security, Mr. Harlan didn't even look at them. Escort Miss Daniels from the building. wrong. Effective immediately, she is no longer employed here. The words hit like a slap-quick, brutal final. But I didn't move. The clients rose to their feet. Wait, one of them said sharply. If she's being silenced, we want to know why. What are you hiding the room? Fractured whispers. Arguments, the partners scrambling, the clients demanding, the security men waiting for orders. And in the chaos, I made my move. I plugged the flash drive into the projector. The screen flickered, and then truth filled the boardroom. Emails, hidden accounts, edits logged with usernames. Line after line of evidence, gasps turned into outrage. One client cursed under his breath. Another grabbed a notepad, scribbling furiously, and in the center of it all, Mr. Harlan's empire began to crack. He lunged toward me faster than I expected. Turn it off. Security moved, but the clients blocked them. No, the lead executive barked. Let her finish. For the first time in years, Mr. Harlan wasn't in control. And the sight of it, the fury in his eyes, the panic behind his mask, was the sweetest thing I'd ever seen. But even as the evidence scrolled, a chill ran through me because this wasn't victory. Not yet. The partners weren't speaking. Marissa's eyes weren't shocked. They were calculating, scheming. And in that silence, I realized Mr. Harlan might fall, but the rest of them, they'd find a way to survive. And when they did, they'd come for me. The meeting ended in chaos. The clients stormed out demanding immediate audits. Security lingered in the hall, waiting for orders that never came. And the partners huddled together, whispering like vultures circling fresh prey. I gathered my things, quietly slipping the flash drive back into my pocket. As I left the boardroom, I felt a dozen eyes on me, some burning with hatred, some filled with fear, but none of them were done with me. That evening, Jordan called. They know it was me, he said, voice tight with fear. They're going to pin this on both of us. Then we don't give them the chance. I said they want to play dirty. Fine, we'll play dirtier. I looked out at the city skyline, glittering against the night. Harlan's downfall was only the beginning. The real war was still coming. And this time, I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to burn their empire to the ground. The morning after the boardroom eruption, Chicago felt different. The skyscrapers stood tall as always. The trains screeched along the tracks, and the lake glistened under the September sun. But for me, the world had tilted. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was a target by 8 a.m. My email was dead by 9. My company ID was deactivated. By noon, I was officially erased from Harlan and Tate. The phone rang only once. Jordan, they're panicking, he said, his voice low. Harlan's been screaming at the partners since last night. The clients are threatening to pull contracts, but they're not going down without a fight. I stared out my window, fingers drumming against the glass. Then we hit them harder that evening. Jordan and I sat in my apartment surrounded by papers, laptops, and coffee cups. Evidence sprawled across the table like a war map. Emails, ledger sheets, screenshots enough to bury a dozen careers. Enough to start a war, but raw evidence wasn't enough. We needed leverage, we needed power. So I made a call. Her name was Evelyn Shaw, a journalist for the Chicago Tribune, sharp, relentless. Feared by CEOs across the Midwest, I'd read her work for years. She was the kind of reporter who smelled blood, long before anyone else. When she answered, I didn't waste time. I have a story for you. Corporate fraud, millions siphoned, executives complicit. There was a pause. Then a cool, steady voice. Prove it. 2 hours later. She was in my apartment, spreading documents across the table. Her eyes narrowed, then widened, then narrowed again. This, she whispered, is a bomb. The next week was chaos. Anonymous tips leaked to the press. Auditors showed up unannounced. Clients demanded emergency meetings. Mr. Harlan fought like a cornered wolf. Press releases, legal threats, half smiles on CNBC interviews, where he called it all baseless accusations. But the cracks were showing. Every denial only sharpened the truth. Inside the firm, betrayal deepened. Colleagues who once worshipped him whispered in dark hallways. Partners pointed fingers at each other. Even Marissa, the same woman who tried to frame me, was now begging for distance from the fire. And then one Friday afternoon, the hammer fell. Federal agents, dozens of them, stormed into Harlan and Tate's glass tower. Badges flashing, files seized, computers confiscated. Employees crowded the lobby, whispering, texting, staring, and at the center of it all, Mr. Harlan himself being LED out in handcuffs. His eyes found mine in the crowd for the first time. There was no smile, no mask, just fury, a promise in his gaze. This isn't over. The news hit like wildfire. Chicago consulting giant under investigation for fraud. CEO arrested in federal probe. Millions missing in client funds. And Evelyn Shaw's article front page, top of the fold, every word cut like a knife. Every secret spilled. I should have felt relief. I should have felt victory, but all I felt was the weight of silence. In my apartment that night, Jordan sat across from me, his face pale. We did it, he said quietly. Yeah, I whispered. But my stomach twisted because I knew something he didn't. This wasn't finished. 2 days later, proof arrived. A letter slipped under my apartment door. No envelope, no signature, just 6 words scrawled across the page. You should have stayed silent. My chest went cold. I checked the locks twice that night, but the feeling of eyes on me never left. Over the next week, the investigation deepened. More arrests, more headlines. Half the partners flipped on each other. To save themselves, Marissa resigned quietly, her name already stained. But even as the empire crumbled, whispers spread that money was still missing. Hidden offshore accounts, dummy corporations, a shadow of Harlan's reach that hadn't been touched. The man might be in prison, but his influence still out there. Then came the call. Evelyn, you've got another problem, she said flatly. Harlan's lawyers are pushing a narrative. They're saying you were the mastermind, that you framed him to cover your own fraud. The room spun, of course, the final play if he couldn't silence me. He'd smear me, turn me into the villain of my own story. That night, Jordan and I pored over documents again. Every file, every timestamp, every login record the evidence was there, clear and undeniable, but in court, evidence wasn't always enough. Reputation mattered, and Harlan was already painting me as the enemy. I clenched my fist. No more defense. No more waiting, we take the fight to him. So we did. A month later, I stood in front of cameras. Outside the federal courthouse, flashes blinded me. Microphones crowded my face. I told the world everything, how I had been silenced, how I had been framed, how greed at the top of Harlan and Tate had nearly destroyed not just me, but every client who trusted them. My voice shook at first, but then it grew stronger, clearer, louder. By the end, the crowd wasn't just listening. They were believing the trial dragged on for months. Testimonies, documents, betrayals laid bare under oath. I watched partners turn on each other like rabid dogs. I watched Marissa sob on the stand, swearing she was only following orders, and I watched Mr. Harlan sit stone-faced, refusing to break even as the walls closed in. When the verdict came, it felt like thunder. Guilty wire fraud, conspiracy embezzlement. The courtroom buzzed, journalists scribbled furiously. And Mr. Harlan, he finally looked at me. No smile, no mask, just silence, the kind that promised a war wasn't over. Only paused afterward. People called me brave. Colleagues who once avoided me sent apologies. Even the clients, the same ones who had doubted me, thanked me for saving them. But I knew better. This wasn't bravery. It was survival. And survival changes you. One evening, long after the trial ended, Jordan and I sat by the lake. The city lights glittered against the water. Rippling with every wave we won, he said softly. I nodded, but inside I wasn't sure because somewhere offshore, Harlan's money was still hidden. Somewhere. Allies I hadn't uncovered were still loyal to him. And somewhere behind prison walls, a man who never tolerated weakness was still waiting for his chance. I stared out at the water and whispered to myself, this isn't over, and I knew it never would be.